Oh, I could?
Yeah.
Excellent. This is already off to a great start. All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome to a special edition. I guess you can call this a combined podcast of Honor Extra and what we originally planned to do, which is a Ring of Honor Retrocast. The myth, the legend, the rare sightings, they're here. And so we're here at pwponings.com, and I don't know if you guys can hear that wonderful traffic outside of my new apartment, but boy, is that fantastic. Anyway, we're got a couple of breaking news stories here that, of course, you guys know, as is the standard here at pwponings.com at the Podcast of Honor. When we release a podcast, of course, the very next day, some big news goes down. And in fact, we had two, I would say, medium news breakdown. So we figured we'd talk about it, but I can't do it all alone. So I've got my compadres here. I've got GST and I've got Miccio, the two Chris's. So how are you guys doing?
Doing good.
Doing fantastic. Can't hear any of the traffic behind you,
I
honestly.
can't either, so it's all good.
Oh, excellent. Good. So viewers, there is no traffic. And don't even worry about it. Yes, I'm just going to be driven crazy by the beeps, and you guys will just go, "What the hell is he talking about?" So that's cool. Don't worry. Anyway, what isn't crazy, but rather probably cool, is that um, one of the I guess the hottest prospects of the independent scene, and somebody who's gotten a lot of name recognition over the last year, is Will Ospreay. He was signed to New Japan Wrestling, and it was announced this week that he will make his first two appearances for Ring of Honor. He's going to be appearing on the Reach for the Sky tour as ROH goes back to the UK. I guess for the first time in about 8 years, and they're going to do three shows. And Ospreay is going to be on two of them. He's going to be Ring of Honor is running Friday, November 18th through the 20th. Friday, they're doing the Liverpool Olympia. Saturday, the Leicester Community Sports Arena.
It's
And
it's
the
less
20th at
it's
London
lesser Ari.
Seymour Leisure Center. And Ospreay will be wrestling on the 18th and the 20th. So, gentlemen, let's start with, I guess, with GST. What do you think about this news? Ospreay had just, you know, been in an angle and evolve where they offered him a contract in the U.S. He hasn't signed anything. He's still pretty much a free agent, internationally. Obviously, he's got the New Japan contract. But GST, how big is this for Ring of Honor? What do you think this means? And what are you looking forward to this?
I'm looking forward to it for sure. I mean, just because he is one of those talents right now that's really hot. Everyone wants to see what he does. Um, I'm excited to see him in a Ring of Honor setting. Granted, he is a New Japan wrestler. He's, as you said, exclusively contracted to work with Evolve WN Live when he's here in the States. And I mean, we'll see. There was an interesting, I guess, clip interview that he did, and there's a video also interview with him for the Tag Rope magazine that I think everyone should check out. And he kind of alludes that there's sort of a possibility that he could work with Ring of Honor here, but I mean, I just don't see that happening, especially since WN Live got him the visa. So if they're footing the bill for that, I just don't see why they'd let him work for Ring of Honor. But yeah, no, I'm excited to see what he does. I'm not as high on him as other people because I mean, maybe it's just because of the amount of wrestling I watch, but I watch guys like Trevor Lee and Ricochet, and then you watch like guys like Kota Ibushi right now, Cedric Alexander, that kind of stuff. And I get what Will Ospreay does. I kind of get from those kind of wrestlers already, and that doesn't mean he's not going to grow on me. He's obviously very young, so in like another 2 to 3 years, he'll be a guy that I'm watching all the time. But for right now, I don't go out of my way to watch him. So, but I am excited that he's on the tour. So good for all the UK wrestling fans out there for those Ring of Honor shows. But in terms of here, um, I don't know. We'll see what happens.
I mean, it is true. He's only doing it in the UK, so he's not here in the US yet. Mikio, is that a major difference, or is it just exciting for Ring of Honor fans to have the ability to say Osprey was a part of Ring of Honor at some point, and obviously the DVDs will be released, video on demand will be released. You never know if ROH is going to decide to put these matches on TV at some point. I mean, what's the impact really for Ospreay coming in, and give us your other general thoughts about the announcement.
Well, I'm excited to see him pretty much anytime he's on a show. I mean, it's you get to see him on, if you have New Japan World, you get to see him on there. If so you get to see him on the WWN live shows like we talked about, or Chris mentioned a minute ago here in the States. When I saw him, I think it was WrestleMania weekend against Zack Sabre Jr., my mind was blown. So I have started to go out of my way to see his work. So I'm really excited to see what he can do against whoever they match him up with in the shows in England. As far as like them broadcasting his matches here in the States, I don't know. I don't know. Maybe Chris, do you think there could be some legalities between WWN Live and them showing him as a contracted performer on their shows? Do you think that could become a possibility?
Well, if they got him the visa and he worked out a contract with them that he's exclusively theirs, then legally Ring of Honor can't show him on any U.S. show.
Right, so it wouldn't even be on VOD then. Those matches would have to be edited off of DVDs and VOD.
No, he could still be on the VODs.
Oh, he can.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure. I don't see how they could say that you can only be on our products that are sold only in the United States. Like
okay.
that's I mean, yes, technically you could write that into a contract, but indie wrestling doing that.
Now the thing is, did he actually really sign the? I mean, are we referring to when he was offered the deal with Paul Heyman at that show?
Right. Again, the more I hear about it, the more I think was just some sort of angle for attention. I mean, or to create the buzz that Ospreay was going to be a part of WWN Live. But no, there is no contract as far as of right now, as of this recording.
So does he have the visa? That's the question.
That's a good question indeed. I don't know.
That's the $1 million question when you really get down to it. If he doesn't actually have the visa and ROH goes out of their way to actually get it for him, then I could understand him saying to the guys at WWN, listen, I know we had a kind of a verbal agreement, but they got me what I really need, and I'm going to have to go with them now. So I think a lot of that depends on how he gets treated by them when he works shows, over in England. But like I said, I'm going to go out of my way to see those matches. There's no question about it in my mind. Yeah. And just one other thing, Ari. It's Leicester, not Leicester.
Sorry, Leicester.
You gotta watch some EPL, man, so you'll actually know what the names of English cities are.
I visited England about 16 years ago, and I had some cheese. It was Leicester cheese, or at least I thought it was pronounced that way. So that just kind of stuck in my head. But I guess I'm gonna go with my, anybody who's overseas in the UK there that I've offended, I want to sincerely apologize.
I mean, their team only happened to win the Premiership last year, so.
Right now you might as well just be reading the alphabet to me because I have no idea what any of that is. So.
Soccer, Ari, soccer.
Soccer?
Yes.
Okay, well, football.
Well, football to them, soccer to us.
Okay. Tomato, aluminum, and aluminium. I don't know. The Brits I don't know. I have an in-law who's from Wales, and I still can't get used to the pronunciations. I'm sorry. Anyway, we're gonna move on. I guess just tangentially connected. I mean, this is a big signing for ROH, and there was another signing that is a deal was signed between ROH and CMLL in Mexico to have a official working relationship. And what I'm reading basically right now, I'm paraphrasing from the report on the Wrestling Observer website. Basically, CMLL made an announcement on a press conference this past Wednesday, and the two promotions are now going to be partnered up. It sort of began with the inclusion of Suka Jr. and the announcement of Dragon Lee working ROH's shows in the past months and in the future. They'll be working, I believe, against Kamatachi. Stuka Jr. wrestled against Kamatachi in Philadelphia a few months ago, and ROH's Matt Taven will be headed to Mexico later this year to compete for CMLL. So this is more of a formalized relationship. You've got some of the CMLL talent coming over to ROH. Some of the ROH guys going to go over to CMLL. And guys, tell me, what do you make of this formalization of a relationship between CMLL and Ring of Honor? Miccio, is this a good thing for ROH, or no big deal really in the end?
It depends on kind of like what the sticking points of the deal are. If it's an equal footing situation, that's fine. If it's a situation where it's sort of like ROH has to swallow another pill and put over their guys, the CMML guys, right and left, like they have to do currently with the New Japan deal, then it's problematic, because then you have two companies, having way too much influence over the booking logic of a third company. So I hope it's an evenly balanced deal. But if it's not, then I really think ROH is going in the wrong direction with this.
And GST, I don't know if you've been exposed to the likes of Dragon Lee and Stuka Jr. and anybody else in CMLL roster, but do you think these are good talent pickups for Ring of Honor? Is this a good move for them to try to bolster their roster at this point?
I mean, we look back at the past with luchadors coming into Ring of Honor, and I can't say it's really worked.
It's not good.
Yeah, it's not good.
Let's just be honest. It's kind of sucked.
Yeah, it has. And it's nothing against those talents that came in. It's just that there's a style that Ring of Honor fans are used to. Nowadays, I don't know, the fan base is a little bit more varied, and maybe hopefully they're a little bit more open-minded to having this kind of wrestling on there. I don't know. I think Dragon Lee is a great wrestler. I haven't seen a lot of him, but I've seen the few matches that everyone raved about. What was that, like a few months ago? So I saw those. And I mean, let's just wait and see, right? That's really all we can do. But if you look back at what Ring of Honor's done in the past, yeah, not so great. Not great.
Yeah, I mean, there's been some pretty infamous moments in Ring of Honor history, and the first thing that comes to my mind is the ROH Big Bang.
I was just gonna say it, man. That show,
where there was some significant issues with the luchadors who were coming in, and they had to be put on last as the main event as a result, and coming after I believe it was Roderick Strong versus Tyler Black, now known as Seth Rollins, and I believe it was Austin Aries. I mean, they would have blown it away. And they stunk up the joint big time. I mean, is the difference this time, guys, that they're using younger talent, maybe better talent? I mean, I'm sorry, but Blue Demon Jr., he's definitely a stylistic conflict, but you put a guy like Dragon Lee or Kamatachi or whoever, and that's much better of a fit, I think. What do you guys think, GSG?
Yeah, stylistically, it's probably going to be a better fit. It just depends on the fans and if they're willing to accept it, and they probably will be. Plus, with Ring of Honor saying that that the All-Star Extravaganza is going to be one of the biggest that we've ever seen. We'll see. We'll see how that works out. With the New Japan, the CMLL relationship, hey, maybe it will be.
The thing that you think about it, it's like, isn't CMLL where New Japan sends a bunch of guys to get some extra work in?
Yes, CMLL and New Japan have that relationship.
Right. So don't you think that that's all kind of just connecting the dots between the two? So it's like, hey, look at the relationship we got with ROH. Maybe you can get the same thing, and they'll do anything to put extra guys on their card.
Hopefully they don't. I mean,
well, that's what I'm afraid of. Honestly speaking, that's totally what I'm afraid of with this.
Yeah.
So, but I mean, do you think, like, with the Ospreay signing, with Kamatachi, with Jay White, I mean, one of the constant complaints, we've heard in the last year or so is that ROH doesn't have that, drive to find the new talents, the young talents, the guys that will generate the buzz. And now here they are. They're out there and they're signing guys, or they're bringing new guys in. Maybe they're not the guys that are on the Cruiserweight Classic that they probably should have picked up on, and they missed out on, but at least they're trying again now. Is that I mean, to me, that is a turnaround from like the last year where we've seen, the major way people got in through ROH was to do their tryout camps and their seminars, and it felt like a pyramid scheme at times. I'm not saying it is or was, because there was some success with some of the guys they brought in, and you'll hear from the guys who do that it's worthwhile to go. But I mean, seriously, this is obviously a difference in terms of how you can now get in through Ring of Honor in an era where ROH was threatened to sort of become bypassed as a way to get noticed, because you have the WWN live connection to WWE, to NXT, and what they're doing in the network. So,
well, that's the problem, is that they've allowed guys to slip through their fingers right and left, and go down to WWN live and be connected to all that stuff. So it's their own fault for being in this position of having to accept whatever they get from outside organizations. It's ridiculous. And it's something that Ari, that we've talked about 100 times when you've been at my house for whatever. That this is one of the biggest issues. There have been tons of guys over the years that ROH has just ignored or let slip through their fingers and never brought in, and now they're at the point where they have to bring in guys from other promotions to bolster up their shows. It's not the way you run an indie. You go out and you dig. You have scouts at lower level indie shows. You go out and look for the talent. It's not just going to show up in your lap.
GST thoughts, concur with what Miccio was just saying?
I think I kind of stand in the middle. I'm happy for it because it's an obvious business relationship between the three, and at the same time, yeah, it's, Ring of Honor not kind of doing what they used to do when it came to talent, but it's a different company now, and they have different goals. So I don't know. We'll see what happens. I mean, we'll see what happens at the end of the year.
To me, it's just like, I always think it's better to be proactive than it is to be reactive. And I think a lot of these deals have been more, like, especially this deal, is more reactive than it's proactive.
Well, I think that's all very well and good to kind of get us into our Retrocast portion of the show, because we are going to be talking about a show that had some interesting adjustments in terms of the ROH roster. It was basically the end of an era, as the week after this show was taking place that we're going to talk about. ROH announced going to live on pay-per-view, their first steps onto television broadcast, and it definitely changed their product for their future, the entire future. Really, everything changed. Some for the better, some for the worse, and a lot of ROH talents were leaving. And the booker at the time, Gabe Sapolsky, who is now the Evolve booker in WWN Live, he had to make adjustments and figure out where he was going and what kind of talent to take. So we're actually going to talk about Good Times, Great Memories, which took place on April 28th, 2007 in Chicago Ridge, Illinois. And again, as I was just saying, guys, this was meant to be a goodbye for Colt Cabana. And as it turned out, several other people were leaving at the same time. Christopher Daniels was leaving for a bigger push in TNA, and Allison Danger was announced as having her last appearance for the ROH roster. So she would continue to appear in the Shimmer Wrestling promotion and sort of be a big influence there. Not sort of, definitely. And as it turned out, and it was also Shingo's last appearance. Shingo had basically done the excursion for Dragon Gate USA to come in, or Dragon Gate to come into the USA, different promotion. And as it turned out, it ended up being the last shows for several other talents, including Austin Aries and Homicide, the Machine Guns, who had been special attractions. They were gone after this for a while. So it definitely was the end of an era. Guys, what did you going back to this show now and seeing sort of this last show of that era, just bring it back to where you guys were in 2007 when all this was going on. GST, I'll start with you. Colt Cabana signs with WWE in the wake of CM Punk. We kind of thought it was inevitable he would go with them eventually, and he was his big chance. But at that point, ROH had already sustained losses of other major talents. Joe a few months earlier, Punk before that. What did it mean for ROH to be losing some of these guys at this time?
I thought it was kind of rough, taking it back to 2007. You look at the range between say 2005 to 2007 was kind of like a different era, and there were all
It
these
was a
great
golden era.
talents. Yeah, it really was for Ring of Honor, and losing all the guys to TNA, and then losing Colt Cabana to WWE. As a Ring of Honor fan, I think we were all taking it kind of hard because it was like, okay, these are the guys that allowed us to enjoy wrestling. Because at the time, was it oddly enough, was it WWE doing they were doing their brand split at the time also, right? So that's kind of weird.
Mm-hmm.
And
They had been there since like I guess 02, 03,
you know,
so
yeah, so they
it
were
was
kind of
still
in
but it was
the
still important
yeah, and then it was
at that
still in
Yeah.
the
point.
latter years of it. But that's what I'm saying. Like it was not a not a terrible time in wrestling, but it just wasn't. It's kind of boring. And Ring of Honor had that substance that a lot of us wanted, and to see another guy, because when you have an indie, like kind of like alluding to what Miccio was saying earlier, that you lose one to two to then four or five guys, having to find people to fill those spots is rough, particularly when their talent is good, as the guys that were leaving, like in Aries and the Machine Guns or Colt Cabana. So, but you're also happy that they were going somewhere else. Like Christopher Daniels, obviously, whatever he was getting paid in TNA is what it is. But if it was more than what he was making in Ring of Honor and possibly more than what Daniel Bryan was making back then, it was like you were happy for him that he could, he could still do that and make money. And same thing with Colt Cabana, who knew it, which we didn't know at the time, like, oh, he's going to be Scotty Goldman. But, you're happy for him, but at the same time, you know that the promotion you're very much a part of and like, yeah, you don't know what's going to happen. So it was kind of that's where I kind of was with Ring of Honor at that time.
Mikio, were you fans of one or a few of these guys? Did you really
All,
enjoy watching these
all of
guys in the
them.
ring? And
All of them. I mean, they were all great, great pillars in the ROH kind of deal. Um, but here's the thing. I remember when we heard that they were all leaving, the first thought in my mind was this is a promotion that's been through so much shit over the last few years. They've always seemed to find a way to keep the ball rolling. And I had a lot of faith in Gabe, and I had a lot of faith in Carrie that they would figure out a way to kind of take this negative and turn it into a positive. And in a lot of ways they did, in a lot of ways they didn't. I mean, they really got totally bogged down in the upcoming months with their faction warfare stuff, which really got old very quickly. But as ROH has always done, even with the times that I get angry with the promotion and how they do things, they always seem to find a way to kind of make lemonade out of lemons, and they did, and it was a little lean time there, but they as with every other time, after the Feinstein incident and everything else, and with the talent raids that they dealt with, they always found a way to kind of make it work, and they did. And maybe some cards weren't as good as others going forward, but that's the reality of life when you run an indie promotion, and it was an indie promotion at the time. So you kept your fingers crossed, and you kept going and supporting the product by going out to the shows and buying the DVDs, and you wanted to keep the ball rolling because you felt as if it was something that you were invested in a bigger way than you were maybe in the WWE at the time. So I had my fingers crossed. Was I afraid? Maybe to a certain extent, but I was hopeful because they had a track record of being, sort of like Rasputin, kind of hard to kill.
I think the big promise of going to pay per view is what kept that sort of momentum from the golden age going forward. I don't. Some of the shows weren't as great as other shows, but I think when you build these pay per view shows up, a show like Man Up, for instance, or Take No Prisoners that came later in that session. I mean, these were really big shows in ROH's story. We already talked about Man Up, I think, on one of the first retrocasts we did. So the pay per view era was a big risk. It should be noted that they actually caught TNA flat footed because even though we knew that this would be Daniel's last show, because they jumped to pay per view, the way TNA's contracts are set up, that the wrestlers couldn't appear on third party pay per views. That automatically meant without any other choice, TNA said, you guys can't appear on these ROH shows anymore, and that's to be expected. Daniels had hinted at in his promo that evening that this ROH TNA rivalry was all in the fans' head, but the ROH TNA relationship throughout their first 5 years of existence, each of them had been sort of not necessarily love and hate, but it was a matter of convenience, and ROH TNA guys were allowed in ROH at TNA's discretion, and when they felt like it wasn't to their advantage or it was to their detriment that these guys would appear on ROH shows, then they pulled them. So, I mean, just in general, you had that going on. Miccio also talked about the faction warfare. This is just a few months after Roderick Strong had turned heel and had joined up with Davey Richards. Richards had convinced him to jump Austin Aries and sort of dissolve the final remains of the Generation Next relationships with Jack Evans. They also attacked Delirious. Yes, there it is. The no remorse call. What's that?
Every time you do something, you have to yell that.
Sure. Well, you just covered it for us, Chris. So yeah, faction warfare, kind of an infamous era, as Gabe was getting influenced by the Dragon Gate system of having these stables and factions fight amongst each other. GST, were you? How did you feel about the Roderick Strong heel turn, and then how did you feel about this sort of start of having the no remorse core, the resilience, and then later on, it took forever, but Jack Evans found his Vulture Squad, and then we also had Age of the Fall. So
you forgot the Hangman 3, Ari.
Oh yes, how can you ever forget the Hangman 3?
Luckily, they weren't a thing yet on this show, thank God, because Brent Albright was still just a gun for hire, and
yes.
He was that for a long time in Ring of Honor. It was like
he was just getting introduced into the roster at this point, too.
Yeah,
so he
kind of weird.
Actually, wasn't even a gun for hire just yet.
No, they called him a gun for hire a couple times on the show.
Oh, did they? Then I must not have been paying attention.
No, he was the guy that had gone after Homicide Shoulder.
Okay.
Right. But anyway, the faction warfare. You know what? It was a nice little idea because Gabe being influenced by the Dragon Gate system, and it's different, and you could see where he was going. Plus, you look back at those factions, they were supposed to kind of bring something out in the guys. Like Davey Richards, Rocky Romero, and Roderick Strong were my favorite, being the no remorse core, as you yell.
No remorse!
Because they were showing off that, we're going to beat these guys up and just, manhandle them because we can and because we're technically sound and we're better than everyone else. And the resilience, they were, so you had Eric Stevens and Austin Aries and, oh shoot! I'm forgetting.
Matt Cross.
There we go, Matt Cross. Yeah, and they were
just let GST waver until he remembered.
Should have, because I would have never remembered Matt Cross.
I would never hang my friend out to dry like that.
I appreciate that, Miccio. It's a real friend.
I guess I just have no remorse.
Ha!
No remorse.
So it was supposed to bring out something in them as a character, and I mean with the Vulture Squad, obviously they were kind of going for that hip hop, and they were the high spot kind of guys, but. Ruckus, I don't want to say he didn't fit it, but he kind of didn't. Let's be honest. It just didn't work. And Jigsaw was a good talent, but I don't know if that really fit.
You're right. He never seemed to kind of fit with the ROH product.
Well, I mean, also with the Vultures. Okay, so at least you could say Jack Evans and Ruckus. Okay, you get that hip-hop urban vibe. But then you're like, Jigsaw. Right. That's totally street right there. So,
and then didn't they actually do the gimmick where he had to take off his mask?
We don't talk about that. Gabe already apologized for it. We don't talk about that. That did happen. It was bad. But you could see what Gabe wanted to do. He wanted each faction to kind of represent a different philosophy, and he tried. And then the Age of the Fall I thought was perfect. Like that was probably the best faction that Ring of Honor's ever had, because it fit everything up until the latter part of it. Then you had Necro Butcher, which was kind of weird. That happened. Not that it was bad to have him, but the way they portrayed it, it was like, okay, him, and then you brought in Brody Lee, but whatever. For this show, I thought it kind of worked well, because at the time, Jack Evans was still the one guy on his own. You didn't know who was going to join him. So I honestly thought he was going to bring in kind of more lucha guys, because obviously for his style. but yeah, it was it had its purpose. The storylines, at least from a logic side, made sense because all three guys hated each other, and then Alex Shelley was in the Motor City Machine Gun, so he almost had no fight in this. But he had, had he and Chris Sabin maybe found a third guy, I guess you could have called it a faction. But yeah, overall, I had no problem with it until it just became too much and it diluted every show.
Yeah, that's the point. That's the thing I was going to say too. Is that it got to a point where it was just too much at some point, and it became like it was like, oh, come on, man. It just was too much. And I understand what he was trying to do, like, and I think it's exactly what you said, Chris, where he was just trying to kind of bring something out of all those guys, but just some of those guys just didn't ever have anything that I think a lot of ROH fans really wanted to see much more of. It's like Roderick Strong turning him heel, that was fine because he's better as a heel than he is as a face. It's always been true. Davey Richards at that point, he was great in that faction, and then he goes to join, Sweet and Sour Incorporated down the line. He was great in that as well. So it's like, it did some things for some guys, but it just became too much, and it was just like when it became the main centerpiece of a lot of shows, and it just seemed to lead to run in after run in after run in. That's when it just became tired, and it was just too much.
And I think we saw the building blocks of all that here, but when the TNA deal went down and Austin Aries was suspended because of his unhappiness in TNA, and then they wouldn't let him wrestle on ROH. You take out 1/3 of the major driving force behind that faction warfare, and it kind of stalled out before it could really get started. And then it picked up again, and it was a rough going. Not everything fit into place. But something that you could see right away. Let's get into the show. The building blocks of the Age of the Fall kind of fall in through this first promo that we get in the show, which is the Jimmy Jacobs promo. He talks about his big Supercard of Honor face-off with B.J. Whitmer and the aftermath of all that. Lacey had offered herself to him for one night, but unlike the boys in the back, he didn't, quote, bang the broad, bro, end quote, because he worked too damn hard for over a year to earn only one night with her, and he wants to win her love. He shows the scars of his surgery at one point in this promo. He takes off his the bandages and shows you the staples and the scars from his surgery from the MCL tear, and eventually just limps off. And I thought this was a good Jacobs program, very good Jacobs program, although with the benefits of hindsight, maybe a bit too long. He was sort of repeating himself at times by the end, but I mean, still a great in-between point to see. We know this is heading now, looking back, that this is heading to the series of date videos with Lacey, him eventually sleeping with her, and then the disappointment, I guess, from that and starting Project 161 in the Age of the Fall. So, guys, very quickly, any thoughts on Jimmy Jacobs' promo to start the show?
I liked it, but like you said, he repeated himself a lot. But back in the day, that's kind of what he did. And I think if he had changed his inflection a little bit, it would have had more good. But I mean, he's always been a good promo, so it was a good.
Yeah,
It worked.
yeah, I feel the same way. It's like the one line that I wrote down when I was watching it. He talked about that night, the match. It changed him forever. And like what you said, Ari, there was the early planted seed of the Age of the Fall thing kind of angle coming. And I thought it was a really good promo. Like Chris just said, though, he did repeat himself a lot, and it did get a little bit a little long. I think the promo was like almost 7 minutes long. So he probably could have gotten it done in like 4, but Jimmy Jacobs is got a creative guy, so you kind of let him go, and ROH at the time really did kind of let him go. So it was good for him, and it was a great way to kind of start telling a story. But it was a little bit on the longer side.
I think we'll get into this as we go on, because Miccio talked about before we started recording. He does have a bone to pick with this show, and with the ROH of that era,
Well,
where
you want me to
things
just
go
throw it
on
out?
a long
Let me just
time.
throw it out there right now. Then, honestly speaking, I think that this show showcased both everything great that Gabe did in this era, but everything wrong that was going on at the same time. Every major complaint that any fan ever had about an ROH show was on this show. The wrestling was fantastic. Who went over was correct. Everything was perfect except the show was like 3 hours and 40 minutes long. And it's like it was hard to bring a lot of your friends into ROH shows at the time who were used to WWE shows being quick and concise, and then expecting them to sit for a 4-hour ROH show, and they're like, I'm exhausted. Can I go home now? When I know that Chris and Ari both watched the show in blocks and chunks. I didn't have the opportunity to do that. I watched it all in one sitting this morning, and by the time I finished watching it, I was exhausted. I wanted to take a nap. And it was like, it's just like, that was the biggest complaint that a lot of people did have about this era in ROH's history, was that the shows were just too long. Listen, I love wrestling. Everybody knows I love wrestling. I have no problem watching a long show, but this one felt long. Not just besides the fact that it was long, it felt long. It felt like you were slogging through this long, drawn out show. And I think it really does encapsulate everything about ROH in 2007. Great wrestling, great promotion, great everything, except just too much of it sometimes.
I think that also
Yeah.
came from Ring of Honor, though, feeling the pressure of getting DVD sales, because at the time you saw TNA growing. There was other promotions like a PWG, CZW, all their competitors, and that was them trying to say, look, you're going to pay $20 for a DVD. We're going to give you a lot of stuff so that it felt like it was worth it, which, hey, it is what it is.
Sometimes, though, it's quality, not quantity, that really brings people back.
Sure, and I think that was kind of where they didn't know where to. They tried to find that balance.
And
what's too much and what isn't.
And let's be honest, some of the shows really did hit that balance perfectly. We're not going to deny that. There were so many shows in that era that were 5-star shows.
Yeah, like Ari bringing up Man Up. Yeah, we did a retrocast on that. You guys should go check that out. It was that to me is still one of the best pay-per-views ever.
Yeah, absolutely. But and the thing
I think it's weird.
It didn't feel long. It felt like it was paced perfectly. This show, maybe not as much.
Well, I think it's weird that remembering back how I felt when I watched the show in 07, it did not seem long to me. Like every match seemed important and every match seemed interesting. But now, in 9 years later, I definitely see some of what Miccio was saying for this go around, and I think it was some of the time lengths we always used to talk about on the car rides home. ROH always gave matches 5 minutes more than they probably should have, but that was like with the Jacobs program. That's a promo. That's sort of the creative freedom that they were giving the guys at the time, and what they tried to do to set themselves different from WWE and TNA and everybody else. So, not to belabor that point, let's move on to the opening match. Delirious won a 6-man mayhem match that included Gran Akuma, Mike Quackenbush, Pele Primo, Hollow Wicked, and Jigsaw. So this is I'm going to call this a Chikara special, if you will, gentlemen.
That's actually what I wrote on my notes, dude.
So this is Quack and his wrestlers were really making their first steps in ROH at this point in the show before in St. Paul. I really enjoyed this opener. I thought everyone was at their best. Everything was clean, precise, fun at times spectacular. It should be noticed. I mean, again, because of the Chikara guys, you got some, and I'd have to go back to Kevin Ford and ask him or anybody else who remembers better. But you've got stuff like Quack and Jig interacting, Incoherence, the future Incoherence of Delirious and Hollow Wicked doing their stuff. I think, Delirious was super over here, probably at the peak of his popularity as a wrestler at times, and maybe wouldn't be as over again until he took the book from Jim Cornette full time. And then Jig took a lot of big moves at the end here and survived them. But Delirious hits Chemical Imbalance 2 on Akuma for the win. This is a great Chikara highlight fest, and I really feel at the time there was a big promise of seeing these guys develop. And so, Miccio, I'm going to start with you. Was this a good spotlight for these these talents, I mean, even Pele Primo got a little bit of shine here. Was this a good spotlight for the talents, or was this not what you wanted from the show to start off with?
Okay, at the time, I would probably say it was not what I wanted from the show because I really wasn't into Chikara at that point. I will say this though, seeing especially Quack do ROH matches kind of did pull me in at some point down the line because I liked his technical skills and like I liked his technical moveset. But at the time, I was really not so excited to see these kind of matches with these guys in it. I watched it today. I thought it was okay. I loved. There's certain elements of Delirious's moveset and his routine or his act, whatever you want to call it, that I love. At the time, I loved it. I still love it today. Just going back and watching it. Shadows over Hell is still one of my favorite moves in all of pro wrestling because it looks fantastic. So yeah, I mean, I guess when you look at it now, it was a good showcase for them. At the time, though, I was really not that interested because it only featured one guy who I really cared too much about. So yeah, it was all right. It wasn't bad. It got the job done as the opener, so it was fine.
GST. This is two bookers, or one current at that time and one future, in the ring at the same time. What do you make of that? What did you think about the match?
Oh, I thought it was tremendous. I thought it was a lot of fun. Kevin Ford over at his Chikara Special blog gave it a 3.25 stars, and I perfectly agree with that. And I also agree that they should have pulled the trigger on Incoherence in Ring of Honor because it would have been fun. It would have been something different. The match itself, yeah, it was the opening spot fest that you would want it to be. And you talk about Pele Primo. I mean, hey, he held his own for as little as he was in there. So good on him.
Yeah, Quack made sure to give him some spotlight. And again, Quack was very highly thought of at the time as a big technician, and obviously someone who could do all different styles. And so, for a young student to go toe to toe with him was definitely giving him the rub. And I really loved Hollow Kid and Delirious just sort of just doing the craziness with each other. I mean that was good stuff. So we move on to the second match, which is Eric Stevens versus Christopher Daniels with Allison Danger. This went to a 15-minute draw, and it felt every minute of those 15 minutes for sure. After the bout, Daniels gave a speech and quit ROH, and we'll talk about that in a moment. At this point, Stevens was part of the Resilience. He was a young dude. He was pretty thick, although in the years afterwards he really thinned down and worked on bodybuilding after he left wrestling. He was getting some buzz from Gabe Sapolsky in the FIP. He had a push there. And Allison Danger looked tremendous, I want to say, in a black nurse's outfit that reveals her tuchus. And yes, I did just say tuchus on a podcast, so I make no apologies for that. And I think the big key to this match was Daniels teasing heel throughout the match and doing heel actions, but still being a face to the crowd. And Prazak and Leonard basically chalk it up to veteran tactics, but then with the promo at the end, everything sort of just makes sense after that. So basically, there's a long heat segment where Stevens clips his stomach on the guardrail outside and draws blood, and they use that for psychology. Stevens regains momentum at the end, is about to hit the doctor bomb when the time limit expires. You know, of course, we get the expected 5 more minutes chant, and Stevens, like a good babyface does, asks for that time, but Daniel says no, and to hit the bricks, he has something to say. And, I felt myself drifting off here during the heat segment, but it picked up at the end, and we'll talk about the promo in a second. But, guys, what did you think of the match? Let's start with Miccio.
I agree with what you said. It was 15 minutes, and it felt like every one of them. So
GST?
Very much the same. Yeah, no, it was a long match. You understood what they were trying to do with Stevens, but at that time he just wasn't ready for that. And Daniels did his best. I think he did the best he could.
Very unexpected for them not to go to the 5 more minutes. But that had a reason, because we get one of Christopher Daniels' best promos in any of his ROH runs before, during, or after, I think, when he heals in the crowd and explains that, at that point they had given up on him, lost faith in him when he had never given up on them. he's been treading water, not getting opportunities since his return to ROH. He brings up TNA and maybe the fans' feelings about him, or because he chose TNA over ROH a few years back, even though he fought like hell to come back. He says there is no rivalry between ROH and TNA, not from the brass, not from the wrestlers. That was all in the fans' head. Again, this is funny because this event was the last time that the TNA contracted talent would appear because ROH was the broadcast pay-per-view. He mentions the crowd forgot about Joe 2 months after his retirement tour. They forgot about CM Punk, and they'll forget Colt Cabana as soon as he's gone. He's going to start the Christopher Daniels retirement tour, which starts now. It ends when he leaves through the curtain. He quits. Allison goes to talk to Daniels to try to get him to change his mind, but he throws her down hard. Now this I thought was amazing, guys. That doing that, the crowd and the Chicago, they do not like that one bit. It completely heals them out. I mean, not even talking bad about them got them to boo. Like they booed after he threw her down, and they chant "F you, Daniels." This was a master stroke of a promo work and a hell of a goodbye for now. Really a shame they couldn't capitalize on it some way because TNA wouldn't allow any of their guys to come back at that point. But man, what a way to go out. GST Daniels obviously was an early part of ROH. We'd come back and forth over the years. But is he the best when he is talking down to the fans like this?
I think he is, yeah. And it was interesting to watch how the fans weren't really hating him while he was talking, even when he said he made more money than Daniel Bryan and all that stuff. But yeah, the shoving of Allison Danger down, that's what they took umbrage with. So, but yeah, it was a great promo, and it was sad to see him leave. And then he's back. Go figure.
He'd come back and then he'd leave, and then he'd come back, then he'd leave. I mean, it's sort of funny that he and Styles were both in and out at times, and it is amazing that they meant so much to both ROH and TNA. But Miccio, what did you make of this promo? Did you like what he had to say? Did it ring true at the time?
Yeah, it did. I thought it was. I thought it was phenomenal. I thought it was a great promo. For a guy to go out with that kind of statement, that was it was awesome. And you're right. It was like he was spewing so much, and nothing was getting the fans to turn on him like the way he wanted them to. And then shoving her down, that really took it all to the next level. It was a great promo, but I remember when we saw we had heard that what was going on behind the scenes, and then we saw the show. It was kind of like, shit, I can't believe they're taking him away at this moment when he's done just cut such a great promo. And the promo is still good, today. When I watched it this afternoon, it was still just as good as like the first time I saw it. So this is the Christopher Daniels I really enjoyed seeing. Where he was just very much condescending to the crowd and just very angry, and it worked out. But a lot of the things did ring true. The fact with the title shots and the opportunities and things like that. So I thought it was a really good promo. I really did. I thought it was excellent.
So throughout the DVD set, we were getting these best times, best memories highlight reel packages that showcase the best or funny moments in Colt Cabana's RH run. So I'm just going to save all that for the end. Except for these first two, I do want to talk about from December 02 when Punk walks out in Colt Cabana's car and forces him to drive back because he's angry. Colt took a plane ticket for the next show instead of being driving buddies with him. And then the next clip after that was ROH Reborn after winning the tag titles, where Cabana sticks a noisemaker in Punk's ear as everyone celebrates their win with confetti and partying. And we get Punk's infamous, "Yeah, my life is a war" line. So, hey, Daniels, ROH didn't forget about CM Punk here anyway. Guys, what do you think about Colt Cabana's run and time with CM Punk and the Second City Saints?
Oh, it's such a good part of Ring of Honor. It was just so fun to watch, Punk be the straight guy and, Cabana just annoy the hell out of him. It was tremendous. So I thought it was, and honestly, when Punk left, Cabana kind of lost something. I mean, for me, granted, I've never been a comedy wrestling guy, so whatever.
Yeah, they were kind of like they were the perfect complement to each other. They were the yin to each other's yang kind of thing, and it was sad when Punk left. I agree with you, Chris. I felt like Cabana kind of got a little lost in the shuffle at that point. But the time together was great. I mean, not to sound cheesy or steal names from the DVD title, but there were a lot of good times and great memories from the CM Punk Colt Cabana Second City Saints run in ROH. Honestly, it was the Second City Saints whole deal that really pulled me into ROH when I first became a fan. So I can't say anything bad about that time that they spent together and all the promos and all the little extra things that they did together. So that time was amazing. It really was.
All right, so we'll get to more of those memories later on in the podcast, but let's go back to the matches. Next up was Brent Albright winning a four-corner survival over BJ Whitmer, Homicide, and Jimmy Rave. Whitmer is wrestling after his cage match with Jacobs. Jimmy Rave is just coming back from the broken jaw he suffered in the UK after his fights with Nigel McGuinness, and that became the infamous jawbreaker lariat move used by nowadays by Dean Ambrose, aka John Moxley from the Indies, and Kyle O'Reilly and other people use it all the time. It should be noted, I mean, as a whole, this Chicago crowd was awesome. They were really into the entire show, but Homicide here, surprisingly, a New Yorker, very over in Chicago. And I thought he was the highlight early and throughout, as his personality and his speed are notable. So he's probably still in pretty decent physical condition at this point. That obviously wouldn't last throughout the years. I thought Rave was a good heel here, but this is just your average four-corner survival match until the last minute or so when everybody goes suplex crazy. Albright gets a half Nelson suplex, and Whitmer lands right on top of his head. And then that's the pinfall. I thought Gabe was smart, though, in booking Albright to go over. He was relatively new, and Gabe knew several talents were leaving. He had to start building the guys right then and there. So, Miccio, what did you think about this match? Was it just your typical four-corner survival, or were you able to enjoy anything from it?
No, actually, the funny thing is, it's like the one that it's weird that of the first three matches on this show, you have multi-man kind of scramble or survival matches. I like this one better than I like the Chikara one, and maybe it's more because these guys have more of the style that I enjoy, the more smash mouth kind of, like hard edge style, which is kind of like what I like. But having two multi-man matches in the first three on your show, that's asking a lot. I will say this though, Jimmy Rave, if you go back and you think about the kind of heat that he used to generate at shows, he was getting BJ Whitmer heat before Whitmer was getting that heat. So it's almost like it transferred from Jimmy Rave to BJ Whitmer. I remember being at shows with you here in New York City, and just people. It's like people were just like insanely like psychotic to want to see Jimmy Rave, like almost to steal the chant from the crowd, "Die Jimmy, die." It was crazy. I've almost forgotten how much I did enjoy his work as a heel, because it's like he just generated. It's like he didn't even have to do anything. He just walked to the ring slowly, and the heat that he generated was unbelievable. But the match itself, it was like I liked it better than the 6-way to open the show. But I like I said, I think it had a lot more to do with the style. That this is what I like to see. I like the more of the smash mouth kind of style match, and that's what these four guys brought to the table.
GST, did you enjoy this match, and did you enjoy Jimmy Rave's heel antics?
I did. Yeah, no, I've always kind of been a fan of that, because it was just so fun watching the people throw toilet paper at him. And it was weird because, we didn't know at the time that would have been Homicide's last match. And it was kind of wondering, like, okay, he's a former champion. What's going to happen? And is he going to, because they were pushing, the commentary at the time also was really great with Lenny Leonard and Dave Prazak. And they really told the story of what was going to happen. The winner of this match was going to kind of put himself up there into the title contention circle. So, yeah, I enjoyed this match. The style, again, like Miccio, more the style that I like. And I agree with you that Albright, he was the right guy to get the win.
And it really should be noted, I actually looked this up from one of my columns, that apparently Rave's eye was shut and needed 6 stitches after he took a headbutt from BJ in this match. So Jimmy Rave was definitely taking his lumps during this time frame and fighting through it. So, I mean, it's gotta be said, gotta be commended.
Wait a
Shibire!
minute. You used to write reviews? Wow, Ari.
Well, it was in the column of honor, whatever that is. I don't even remember it anymore.
You remember that thing? It existed.
It's retro, just like this podcast.
Exactly.
So we move on. We move on to Austin Aries defeating Rocky Romero, the leader of the Resilience, versus a lieutenant of the No Remorse Corps. Oh, see, I was leaving you room there, Miccio. You didn't do it this time.
No remorse.
Yeah, thank you. Oh, guys, I'm sorry for that. If anybody wearing headphones, I apologize. Aries super over at this time, and he would be super over when he came back eventually. The crowd gets actually surprisingly into this as the match goes on. I mean, on the face of it, it doesn't seem like much, but it was a very action-packed match. Aries had just lost to Morishima the night before. Romero had won a faction warfare four-way match. Both use a lot of strikes. Romero uses submissions and MMA work on the arm, and that's the psychology is the arm work to lead to the Diablo armbar off the top. Aries does a good job blocking all that. He gets his 3-move combo for the clean win. Strong in the post-match tries to attack, but Delirious, who had been a victim of the NRC, runs out and chases him through the building to stop it before it gets going. And gentlemen, thoughts on this match? Let's go to GST. Were you surprised that Aries was super over at this time and that he got a clean win over the heel unit, which was just getting started at this point?
I kind of was, but I felt that Gabe knew what he was doing in the sense that the heels, they're not going to win all the time. And Aries is definitely not, because he also knew who he was writing for. And we were the niche wrestling fan. Like, we knew these guys, we knew their abilities. And while we like a good story, I don't think there have been that many people that thought Rocky Romero could really beat Aries. So, especially since that, even though he lost, he's a heavyweight title contender, and Rocky Romero, he's a tag wrestler. He's good, but you wanted the match to be kind of back and forth. And honestly, I don't remember when I was watching this. I remember liking it more then than I did now. And then when I watched it now, it's just like, oh, it was just kind of a. I'm not saying it was a bad match, but I wouldn't put it above, say, like a 3-star match. Whereas back then, I'm pretty sure that I thought it was a really good match. Not like 4 stars, but better than what I watched it, currently.
Yeah, I felt the same way when I watched it as well. It was like I remembered liking it a lot more then than I did now. Honestly speaking, and I might catch some heat for this, I don't know, but I was never a real fan of Romero as a singles guy. I never felt like he was a threat to anybody. Sort of like later on when we get down the card when we talk about like the Strong versus Evans fight. I never got Jack Evans as a single either. He just never felt like he could be a threat to the real top level guys. So it was just like, it was whatever. And, I always listen, I'll never not love seeing the Aries like final finish combo sequence. I love it. It's always been awesome. So to see him do it was great. But at the same time, it was, it was just a match on the card when I watched it today.
It's interesting. There's some reciprocal booking here with the leaders of the factions going over in their matches on the show. So I didn't mind the clean win at all. I thought it was very interesting. Obviously, we didn't know at the time Aries would not be allowed on future shows, so you really did want to keep him strong at this point, and just things worked out the way things worked out. So we're going to move on to Takeshi Morishima, ROH World Champion, defending his title, defeating Shingo from Dragon Gate USA to retain the title. And so this is essentially a Noah versus Dragon Gate match. So Morishima is playing the role of New Japan Pro Wrestling to Shingo's ROH today. Leonard recognizes that this is Shingo's last match in Philly. Sorry, not Philly, but in ROH by saying that if he loses, Shingo will leave ROH. And again, the match where Chicago fans are fantastic because, it's a match where on the face of it, you say, Shingo, I don't think he's going to win a title here. But, man, they were buying quite a few of the near fall Shingo at the end of the match. And it was built really well. The psychology always of Morishima is this big, powerful dude. But, some of the bigger guys like a Claudio or Albright, even Bryan Danielson, the way they knocked him down, drew everyone in. And they gave they gave a standing ovation for Shingo delivering a base vertical suplex because of Morishima's body shape and the selling of how difficult it is to get him off his feet and the effort involved in executing that move. So just to get a standing ovation from the crowd off a basic suplex shows you exactly how well they did their job here, convincing the crowd that there could be a title change. He gets similar buzz from the crowd for a DDT on the apron, a DVD on the floor, the last Falcone, and a superplex. But Morishima rebuilds momentum by absorbing Shingo's lariat attacks and delivering several of his own. And then finally, a backdrop driver, which is his finisher for the 3 count. Miccio, did Morishima and Shingo draw you into this match 9 years later?
Yeah, absolutely. It still did. It was just it's the type, but this is the type of match that I like. I've already kind of stated that it's one of those strong style smash kind of wrestling matches, and that's what I enjoy. So it was just as good today as it was then. Maybe even I appreciated it more today than I did then because I haven't really sat back and watched a match with Morishima in it in a long time. And one of the things that I wrote down to myself when I was taking my notes on the show was I wish that Morishima had stayed in the United States a little bit longer. Had more, maybe had taken things a little bit differently and stayed here instead of going home. I always really did enjoy watching him. Obviously, his series with Danielson and his series with Nigel are both epic and close to being perfect wrestling matches in my opinion as I've ever seen. So that was good to see him. The one other thing that I wrote down is you had a battle of great hairstyles in this match. I mean, Morishima with the mop on his head and Shingo with the overly complicated mullet. It was fantastic. But the match was great. The crowd was great for this match, and this was probably the match that was right before the intermission at the live show. So it was a perfect way to kind of send the crowd into the second half of the show.
So GST, this is Shingo's last match at this point. I really do think you see the pieces, or saw the pieces of the personality that he would develop in the future years when he became this just absolutely amazing prick heel in Dragon Gate over the years. What did you think about this match and just in general of Shingo's overall run in that year of an excursion?
Yeah, no, I got caught up into it while I was watching this match. Even though I knew in the back of my head Morishima retained the title, there were definitely a couple spots there I was like, holy crap, Shingo just hit that. It was a really good match. You look back then and look at the variety that they have with the Dragon Gate and Noah guys, and you look at, I don't know, you look at what they have now with New Japan, and it's similar, but back then, for whatever reason, there was a little bit more excitement. And maybe that was just because you knew that Dragon Gate versus Noah guys probably really wouldn't happen all that often. But yeah, no, this match was a really good, I believe it was, I want to say it was Morishima's 5th or 6th title defense. And, he was still growing on me as a champion, but I liked that kind of a wrestler, even though obviously he didn't cut promos or anything. But it worked out, and I think just that Smash Mouth style, it really brought the crowd in, and I'm sure they enjoyed it. Obviously they did. They enjoyed it. And, yeah, I don't know. It was it's you look at those type of title defenses back then, and that's what Ring of Honor was known for. So, I think that's why, when we talk about some of the match lines that Ring of Honor brought up through the years, this was a good epitome of that. This is what we wanted out of our Ring of Honor wrestling.
All right, and the match set to be Sugarfoot Alex Payne, one of Chicago's favorite ROH students, young boys, up against Bobby Dempsey, was not to be because Tank Toland comes out, stops it before it starts, calls himself a natural superior athlete, and it can make a million jokes about that in today's landscape, but I won't. But he launches a million fat joke ships at Bobby Dempsey, like, is it me or is it fat in here? And pick your 5 chins up. Classic. He offers his services to Bobby to get him into shape, and for proof of how his system works, he takes the match with Payne, and it's a very quick squash match. Payne gets almost nothing. Bobby looks like he accepts the offer, and Toland essentially accepts for him. Then makes him do lunges on the way back to the dressing room. Basically, a quick match to get back from intermission and to start the tremendous little run of Bobby Dempsey as the water boy of sorts for the Sweet and Sour Incorporated faction, and Tank's attempts to have him lose weight, which hilariously backfired every single time. Miccio, let's not necessarily talk about the match, but the entertainment value of Tank Toland's Fat Joe Comedy Hour. Did you think he did a good job with that? And Bobby, did he do a good job selling the fact that he was almost like desperate to get Tank's approval in a way?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that was the only part of the whole segment that I actually enjoyed, was the talking part. The wrestling, I never really thought that Tank Toland was very good in the ring. So that part was just like, eh. But the berating of Bobby Dempsey, the whole Bobby Dempsey playing the fool kind of thing, I love that. I thought that was a great gimmick. I thought it was a great bit when it developed down the line to the Sweet and Sour kind of deal with Larry Sweeney. It became even funnier, especially when it involved Chris Hero. So it was the beginning of something. It was the beginning of something good. But the match itself was there. And Tank Toland, like I said, Tank Toland never really did much for me as a wrestler. So whatever. But the setting up the whole thing with Bobby Dempsey was great. I mean, we all liked Bobby. I mean, we when we used to go to all the live shows, you'd run into Bobby, whether at the merch table or at the concession stand, and he was always so appreciative to have somebody say something nice to him, and I always made sure that I did say, keep up the good work or something like that, and he was really appreciative. So I always had a soft spot for Bobby. So to see him just getting to be part of a storyline to me at the time was something that I was happy for him, just to be involved and be on the shows in a way that was not just as a kind of student or ringside security kind of guys.
GST, better workout program, Tank Toland's system or Simon Dean?
I'm probably just going to pick Simon Dean because I enjoyed that character a heck of a lot more. Tank Toland, God, that guy just annoyed the crap out of me. Which obviously was his role, but he had, for me, he had X-Pac heat. I just fast forwarded through
Really?
most of his segments. Yeah, I couldn't stand Tank Toland. I thought it was annoying.
I like Tank Toland.
I'm sure you
I don't
did, but
know
that's
why.
because you're a Jim Cornette guy. So,
I am. Oh, you
Uh,
take that back right
but yeah, no,
now,
I never.
You take that back, Chris. You take that back.
Right? I never got in him. I thought he was an annoying little dude from WWE, and whatever. Didn't so yeah, the match didn't do anything for me. I feel Bobby Dempsey. Obviously this was fun, but eh, you know, again, not for the comedy stuff. Not my thing.
No problem. Completely understand that. Next match is Roderick Strong defeating Jack Evans. This is a rematch from Detroit Supercard, I believe. This is a match dominated by Strong, with Evans getting flourishes, mostly impressive with his kicks, and of course his flying is the best thing he did in this one, being a flying drop kick running over the ropes to the outside. And I thought Strong's role in this match was very interesting, as he's experimenting at playing the bigger guy and a heel in a match when he's not usually the bigger guy. So he throws around Evans with ease and almost carelessness, or I won't call it carelessness now, but like the appearance of carelessness or recklessness. I'm sure Strong knew exactly what he was doing in this match, but some of the ways he threw Evans around was pretty vicious, and he dumps him all over the place and all over his back and neck. He ties him in knots in the turnbuckle and the mat. Evan goes for the 630, but is kicked off. Romero is on the outside and kicks him in the head behind the ref's back so that he's KO'd. And then Strong uses the CX02 cutter for the pinfall. So they continue the beatdown after the match. And once again, Delirious runs out with two chairs. This time makes the save. But before that, Romero hits this Van Damme-like spin kick to Evans' head. So Evans just got beaten up all over the place. And GST, was this a spotlight match for Strong, and did it work? And did you think Evans got enough here to keep him going, or should he have gotten more?
I think that it was definitely a good showing for Strong and to kind of put him into that no remorse core mindset. I mean, he was just beating up Evans, especially with that submission where it was like a surfboard, but then he tucked his arms underneath his leg and then just bent him all the way backwards. Like, just ridiculous amount of flexibility from Jack Evans. Evans showed off his style well enough, the kicks, the flips, but with a guy like Strong, it didn't come off as well as it could have, because I think Strong could have sold maybe a little bit more, but maybe that wasn't the point. Maybe the point was to show that Strong could just manhandle anyone, and that Jack Evans, this kind of set the tone that Jack Evans would be the weakest of the three guys out of Generation Next, and in terms of leading a faction. And then Delirious coming out at the end, when you look at what happened, it was like, well, that made no sense, but whatever. Um, but yeah, no, I still liked the match, and Strong I thought looked good. As we all said, he's better off as a heel, and this was definitely that. And the fans loved Jack Evans, so this beating him up endlessly kind of worked.
All right. Well, the fans might have loved Jack Evans, but Miccio, I know you said earlier in the show that you were not the biggest fan of Jack Evans. Why don't you talk about it?
Wait a minute. I never said I wasn't a big fan of him. I said I wasn't a big fan of him as a single.
Okay, as a singles. All right. I'm sorry for that. Go ahead.
If you put in a tag team, I never had an issue with him. I always thought he was a great tag team kind of guy. I just never felt that when he wrestled in singles matches, he ever kind of carried that feeling that he might beat the bigger name guy. So I never really took him seriously in a singles kind of arena. His offense to me, even to this day, and it's not to say that I don't like him. I just said I do like him, but even to this day, you watch him today in Lucha Underground, it's still pretty much the same thing. He only can really, in my mind, flourish in a tag team match where it feels as if it's more organic. When he's wrestling as a single, it always felt forced to me. Like, I'm sorry, I just can't believe that this guy who only does flips and kicks and stuff like that for the most part is going to really prevent a great threat to a guy like Roderick Strong, who has an arsenal of moves that was that seemed like it never ended, and a series of like just like crushing submission holds. It just never felt to me like he was on the level with these guys, and that's why it just was weird to me. It's like,
yeah, well, and again, then the booking of this match that then helps your point, or kind of works with it because
that he had to go out and find guys. I
don't think he looked convincing at all here.
Right, he had to go out and find guys to kind of even be at the level with anybody else.
Yeah, but was that the point? Do you think Roderick Strong dominating this was to get over him as the big bad of the NRC?
Yeah, I think so to a certain extent. I do. But if you think back and you go back to other Jack Evans matches from the same era where he worked as a single, you're pretty much getting the same kind of deal.
Okay, fair enough. For me, I definitely would have liked to see a little bit more from Evans, but as you said, his offense sometimes was less than believable. So from there, we go on to the ROH World Tag Team Championship with the Briscoe brothers, Jay and Mark Briscoe, successfully defending the title against the Motor City Machine Guns of Alex Shelley and Chris Sabin. And this follows up on their previous match, I believe, which was amazing, and that was about a year previous to that. And basically, or was this the first match? Actually, my brain is slipping here, guys. I don't remember. I'd have to look that up. Anyway, this was a classic. Miccio mentioned earlier, it was very long. About 35, 40 minutes, and
it was 35 minutes, just about.
Yeah, so it was a lot of the idea of providing, basically a tag team match in every sense of that word. It was, focusing on the tags between the guys, focusing on the double teams between the guys, and with a little dash of the Motor City Machine Guns personality. There was a little bit of comedy early on, but then obviously once things picked up, they really picked up. Just so many double teams, so many intricate weaving in and out of tag moves and body placement. I mean, it really was. I could not do justice. Would not be able to do justice to it all. For me, this remains a classic of that era and probably one of the, I would say, top 25 tag team matches in ROH history. But that's my opinion, and these guys might have a little something different to say about that. By the end, you had both teams hit their biggest moves, but the Briscoes threatened with the cutthroat driver for Mark Briscoe, and that got a very close 3 count. With all these the teams breaking up at the last possible moment, providing a lot of drama, getting these fans up on their feet. It was a cutthroat driver leg drop combination that got the win for the Briscoes and the retention. Obviously, as we said before, this is one of the last appearances of the Motor City Machine Guns for a little bit, and they would pop in and out every so often as a special attraction in ROH over the next several years before, we know the current history where Chris Sabin came in as part of the Addiction faction. Alex Shelley came back, and eventually they've reformed the Motor City Machine Guns nowadays. So I'm going to turn to Miccio. Was the time factor too much of a hindrance for you to enjoy this match? Did it not hold up to the classic status it received at that time frame?
No, it's still a classic. There's no question about it. It's still a classic, but it is also still really, really, really long. I think it would have been a classic if they had cut the match to 22 minutes, 21 minutes. You're not going to get a bad match from these two teams. They just match up stylistically and athletically so well with each other that even if you gave them 10 minutes, it would still be 10 minutes of awesomeness. So in that sense, you couldn't go wrong with both of these teams. It was exactly what you expected. You got great tag wrestling. You got great double teams. You got great selling. You got great action. It was just really, really, really good, but really, really, really long. Watch. I had to like. I think I paused it like twice when I was watching because I was just like, I'm like, Jesus, is this thing still going on?
Yeah, in fact, I walked out to the kitchen here to get some food, back and forth twice because I really wasn't gonna, didn't feel like I would miss much, and I heard Jay Briscoe chopping the hell out of one of the either Sabin
Yeah,
or Shelley
it
halfway
was
across.
Shelley. There was one chop he hit him with that was so loud you could like feel it.
Yep.
But it was a great match. There's no doubt about it. It was a Gabe special circa 2007 where it's just let four guys who are great go out, tear it up, and go for 35 minutes. And maybe,
GST.
well, there's one other thing.
Oh, sorry.
Maybe it's because he realized, or maybe it's because they booked it this way because they realized that they weren't going to go as long with the main event, that they would kind of make this really the main event, if you will, of the evening, rather
Yes.
than closing with Pierce and have Pierce and Cabana close, but make this the real main event of the night.
Yeah, and I would totally agree with that. I think you exactly see that in terms of like this is the work rate match where everyone goes balls to the wall, and then the Cabana match is that sweet, celebration match with, and we'll talk about this a little bit more in a second, but Cabana's just sort of, you get a Colt Cabana match in the main event, not a main event style main event. So this one is the one that's going to do that. GST thoughts on the match? How were the Briscoes have definitely evolved over the years. They were sort of in the middle of their evolution here. Is there anything that you picked up on that they were doing right here or had room to improve on?
I felt that at the time they were just still that, yeah, like you said, they were evolving into what became their act now, which is they're two rough guys live on a farm and they're from Sandy Fort, and they just fight and they like to do that. But at this point, they were still kind of two youngins. Um, they weren't using the what they used to wear the amateur singlets, and now they were firmly wearing the matching trunks, shorts.
Like the
Yeah,
boxing
kind of like the
trunks.
boxing
Yeah.
look. So they didn't really know what they wanted to be because they were wrestlers, but they were the tough guys, but they weren't. They still kind of just acted like wrestlers, if that makes sense. They were just two wrestlers that were tag team. They were brothers. That was it. There wasn't a whole lot more to them. And I feel that they told their stories in the ring by just beating up guys, having that really fun action-packed style. And this match, I mean, I don't know what else can be said about it. It's still a classic. I mean, I watched it today, and I'm kind of left wondering, man, you don't see a lot of wrestling matches like this now. In a weird way, you kind of do, but at that time, this template it was fast paced. There was a lot of um again, like that smash mouth wrestling, because like with suplexes and kicks and chops, like you guys mentioned, kind of the same thing for me. When he hit that chop, I was like, what the hell? Um, it was it really was the opinion of what a lot of good Ring of Honor fans wanted, and I think to this day, like if anyone watches it, it's probably one of the better tag matches of that year, and possibly would hold up even now. And then you saw the Motor City Machine Guns, and then given we've talked about this whole time, this TNA, and I think that kind of is a broader story of what this show was. That we saw Ring of Honor have all these talents at one time, and then just them getting stripped away little by little. And then obviously we want to talk about it currently, which I'm sure we will at the end of the podcast, like them coming back. So we'll see what happens. But yeah, this is a great match.
The other thing I noticed when I was watching this, I paid a lot of attention to Jay Briscoe specifically. It's funny. He when you watch him now doing most of his single stuff that he's been doing over the last few years, it's almost all still the same stuff that he was doing in this match in 2007.
Yeah, it really is. Yeah, and he just
And
he just does it with a different panache, I
he does
guess.
it with a lot. He does it with a lot more, like let's say, a lot more spring in his step now, a lot more force and a lot more aggression. But it's
Sure.
all still pretty much basically the same thing. So I think right now he was kind of really learning who he was as a performer and what moves work for him consistently. Because if you do go back and watch either a singles match of his now or even a Briscoe Brothers tag team match from recent, ROH TV shows, they still work basically the same thing. But like you said, it's just they've found out who they are and they've dialed it up and become more aggressive. And you know what? There's nothing wrong with a guy finding what works for him and sticking with it and just tweaking it that little bit to take him from being a guy who's a really good hand in a great tag team and becoming a great singles wrestler too.
To more cutthroat drivers and shooting star presses from Mark Briscoe.
Well, Mark Briscoe, he's found his place where he does, his redneck kung fu stuff, and people love it. They do. I mean, they really do. I know Chris doesn't like comedy wrestling, but Mark Briscoe is comic gold when you really get down to
He
it.
is. No, he's very good. Yeah, it's more for me comedy wrestling, and I'll to put it this way: there's like for example, there are guys that do comedy wrestling because it's funny and it's in the moment and it makes the crowd be a little bit more engaged in the match. And then there's just comedy wrestling for the sake of doing it. That's the wrestling that's just not for me. It's ironically, it's kind of the stuff that Colt Cabana does everywhere else. He does, and people say, "Oh, but he's doing that World of Sports / British." It's like, but he's not. He's doing the funny parts of it. He's not doing
Right.
the serious parts, and that's fine. That's for everyone else. That's not for me. So
Well,
there
and
is a
that brings
difference,
that brings
I
us
think.
that brings us to Colt Cabana, and Colt Cabana definitely. I mean, was a comedy wrestler, but he was also a wrestler. You can't undersell um, his versatility in Ring of Honor, and I think some of the highlights they had here definitely showcase that. Even if the highlights they showed weren't necessarily matches, he didn't win all the matches. He didn't win all the titles. He had success because of his personality and his connection with the fans, and that they made him laugh. And but he could also work. I mean, you look at I'll just run through the rest of the best memories highlights they showed, and you'll see. They showed Cabana versus Aries in the steel cage match in an early ROH title defense for Aries. They showed clips of the Soccer Riot match versus Nigel at Night of the Grudges 2, where everything from soccer balls to ball shots to headbutts were legal, which led to that crowd chant there. You had Cabana versus James Gibson. You had Cabana showing his toughness and restarting the match in his feud against Homicide, the 4th anniversary show, where he showed some serious side to him. They did some pretty heavy stuff with Homicide pouring bleach down his throat, and Cabana having to earn respect from Homicide after disrespecting him in that feud. And then you had the Cabana versus Bryan Danielson at ROH Gut Check, where Cabana almost won the ROH World Title. The match ended up in a draw, and unfortunately, this match goes down in history as the one where Danielson suffered his shoulder injury that would eventually force him to take time off and come back actually just around this time for the ROH pay-per-view in 2007. And Cabana uses Lacey's shoe on Jimmy Jacobs and delivers the Colt 45 on both Jacobs and Lacey to win the grudge match those two had at the 50th Year Festival Chicago. So, gentlemen, any thoughts on any of those or any other good times, great memories of Colt Cabana in ROH at that point? Let's start with Miccio.
Yeah. Listen, it's like you always knew when you'd get the segment with him doing the good times, great memories, kind of backstage kind of vignettes. You always knew you'd get a good laugh out of it. So you think back about that, and that you always had it. It was always kind of like the lighthearted moment of your ROH DVD. The matches that you talked about, especially the Homicide series, that was probably the first time in a long time that most of us had taken Colt as seriously as a wrestler. And it was good to kind of have that switch with him. And then when he got into the whole thing with Lacey and stuff like that, you knew that he had that in him at the time. I remember when the Soccer Riot match took place, and I saw the DVD, and I don't know, for some reason or other, it just smacked as really hokey for me. But all those segments that they showed were good segments. They were good stuff that you would remember from Cabana's run in ROH. And I think they really did kind of did him well at the time, production wise, with putting that together the way that they did. That was one thing that I did notice about watching the show, that the production values were all the ones that we used to scream and complain about, with the hot lights and everything getting whited out and maybe things not looking right or coming across correctly. But they did a really good job for what they were doing at the time to kind of put across how the people who ran the show felt about Cabana and his time with them. And I think it was a credit to them and a credit to him for giving us so many of those positive memories from his era in the company.
GST, thoughts on any Colt Cabana memories from this time?
Yeah, no, kind of the same. He doing the backstage stuff I thought worked well just because he is a promo guy. He's very good at talking. He's entertaining. And yeah, I mean, I think most people will point to the feud he had with Homicide as when it was like, okay, he's more than just the funny guy. But really, the stuff he did with Ace Steel and CM Punk really is kind of the shining moments for him. And he did provide something different for Ring of Honor, because for Ring of Honor at the time was the serious promotion. This is where the serious wrestling is, and he is that one of the two or three guys that did something a little bit different. It was like him and Jimmy Rave, kind of the Motor City Machine Guns too. I just added a little bit of humor to their wrestling, rather than just being guys that are angry at each other or technical wrestlers, that kind of stuff. So
yeah, like the guys with the wink and a nod, if you will.
yes, and you need that. You need variety on your show, which is why I appreciated what Colt Cabana did. It doesn't mean that his segments were always for me, but I appreciate that he brought that, because you needed that. And I think once he left, they kind of tried to fill that void. And I don't know if Delirious was the right choice. I mean, we're still dealing with Delirious now, so whatever. But yeah, no, I think that it was a good run for him, and then he went to WWE, and as they say, the rest is history.
And then he would come back, and then he would leave, and then he would come back again. You know what? I'm surprised that the one major stuff from either backstage or even the match where he was his manager, all the interactions with Bobby the Brain Heenan, I thought should have gotten a little bit of some love and attention here, and we're not included. But anybody who can find some of that stuff, whether it's on the internet or through ROH Best of DVDs, that go check out Bobby Heenan in ROH. That was a special moment. So then we get the farewell match, the last match, the main event. Colt Cabana defeating Adam Pearce with Shane Hagedorn. The big highlight. I mean, it was a relatively quick main event, but a lot of comedy, a lot of big things right off the bat with the streamers and just a ton and tons and tons of streamers coming down, and we get the visual of Adam Pearce attacking Colt before the bell while all the streamers are around, and then Colt outsmarting him, wrapping him up in the streamers and tripping him up. So yes, it's comedy, it's humor, but it's also smart. It's like taking that moment where they knew that this would happen. They knew that Colt would be shower streamers. So what do you do with it? Do you just throw the streamers on the floor and you move on and do your match, or do you incorporate it somehow? And I think they did a great job with that. Jimmy Bauer comes in on the booth for a rare appearance as he thanks Colt Cabana for his run in ROH. Colt gets Adam Pearce to dance by switching his arms on a test of strength. After Hagedorn trips Colt twice, he's ejected on a Eddie Guerrero-like chair shot fake out where Colt hits the apron with a chair and pretends he was hit. So obviously you can see just shenanigans aplenty. Pierce brings out the Gold Bond as a reference to the Gold Bond Mafia stuff with all the Chicago guys, but it backfires and he gets the Gold Bond on himself and he burns. Pierce gets a German off the flying a-hole and an Alabama jam, but then it's all Colt from there. Full Cabana comeback. He gives the crowd what they want to see and more, and then he taps Pierce with the Billy Goat's Curse. So again, really just an extended match of Cabana's antics, and that's the way I feel it should have been anyway. So it's really the story of the match is just Colt enjoying the final appearance and giving the fans what they wanted to see from him, and the opportunity to say farewell. And in that farewell, Colt gives Adam his praise for starting out with him, and he extends his hand to go on a good note. Pierce puts him over in his speech, but then spits in his face and walks out. From there, everyone else from the locker room is out to celebrate, including Colt's mom and dad. Cabana gives his a really good, really sweet farewell celebration speech where he says that one day he'll come back and Gabe better get his pencil ready because he's going to be the ROH World Champion on someday. And I don't think we quite understood. We would have predicted that. It wouldn't be Gabe holding the pencil when Cabana was coming back and slotted in a ROH title feud with Jay Lethal, but that's what happened. And he exits out to Billy Joel's The Entertainer. And obviously Cabana and Pierce would be back at it once again once Colt came back to the independent scene and they had that best of 7 series. I think it was called the 7 Stages of Hell or 7 Stages of Pain. And that was for the NWA Championship. So these guys are very much tied together in their Chicago history, in their personal history, in their wrestling history. So it was a fitting farewell slot for them both. So let's start with GST. What did you think about this whole presentation and the presentation as a whole?
I liked it. I thought it was a fitting end for him, and then obviously Cabana and Pierce would face each other again later on down the line and in the NWA. But I mean, look, the match was fine. The match was good. It was I don't know, like maybe a 3.5-star match. But it for the fans there watching, especially because it was Chicago, it was important to them, and I think it was important to us. While I was watching it, I'll admit that I got a little nostalgic, and then when I realized, oh wait, he did come back, and he just got a Ring of Honor World Title shot. Okay,
and he still hasn't won the belt 9 years later.
Right, he still hasn't won that belt 9 years later. But yeah, it was fun. It was fun to watch him do this, and like I said, it just even though it's comedy, but it was fun, and it fit the tone of the match, and that's what that to me is what counts more. And yeah, having Pierce tap out, what better way for Cabana to leave? Because I think it kind of fit also in the storyline Pierce going forward. Pierce kind of forming the Hangman's Three and kind of being angry and all that. So I think it worked out well.
Miccio, your thoughts on the Colt Cabana's at that time farewell match?
I thought doing it with Pierce at the time was definitely the best choice to go with. Adam Pearce, and I talk about him all the time with you, Ari. I love him. His gimmick, his like the old school, like classic heel gimmick, the very Larry Zbyszko-ish kind of heel gimmick. I loved it. I always loved it. I always will love it because I think that's one of those things that's really missing from wrestling today is that classic old school heel that, jaw jacks with the fans and just has that kind of personality. So it was the perfect contrast. Colt Cabana is kind of like, when he would play to the crowd, it would always be the joke or to mug or to kind of like make fun of his opponent. It fit perfectly. These guys really did work together. It was a decent match, like Chris said. It was nice to see Cabana, kind of win his last match. And like I think if he didn't, I think the crowd would have probably gone nuts. But I thought Pierce's promo after the match was just fantastic, and like Chris said, it probably did set up where they were going with him as like the really angry kind of get off my lawn type heel that he was going to become going forward from this point on. And like I said, it's funny when Colt cut his promo at the end. It's sort of like the first thing that popped in my head when he said, I'm going to come back and I'm going to win the Ring of Honor Championship. I'm like, yep, 9 years later, you still haven't done it, buddy. So it's sort of like maybe it goes to show how people view Cabana in the bigger picture of where he fits on a card. That it's not it's not as the champion in the title match. That it's someone in other matches down the line to kind of entertain the crowd, to be more of the flamboyant, the more traditional professional wrestling type, match on the card. But it was a fitting send off, and I remember when it happened, we all kind of did have the feels because Colt was one of those guys who had been there since since the beginning. I mean, he came in December of 2002, so it was like what, the fifth show maybe? Was it the fifth show that he showed up?
Yeah, it
I
was
think
pretty
so,
early
yeah.
on.
No, it was like the ninth show. I'm looking at the DVDs actually on my. Was their first night of the Butcher?
Yeah, because that was the whole thing in the beginning, showing
Right. So it was like I
Pumpkin
think it's like
Cabana in the car.
the ninth show if my counting is correct here, either the ninth or 10th. But he'd been to me that always seemed like he was always there. So it was sad to see him go, and we all hoped for the best for him in WWE. And I think I remember having the conversation with you at the time, Ari, that you kind of were afraid for maybe his future there. I think I was a little bit more upbeat about it, and you wound up getting it right. That you didn't. I don't think you thought that they would get it right with him, and you were right.
I'm glad you remember that I said that because I don't remember that I said that, but I'm glad you said that I said that, so now I can claim to be right.
Yeah, you did say that. I remember having the conversation that you were really down on the idea of WWE getting the character right for him, and you were 100% right.
I think I was just down on the WWE in general, probably at that point, and it's not until recently that they've quote unquote got what it takes to push guys who are different from what they've expected their system to produce. So,
and you see what the main tactic is that they use at this point, right? Let a guy who's been doing
co-opting
something
everybody
well.
else. Yes.
No, letting a guy who's been doing something well somewhere else continue to do what he was doing well in the other place.
Yes, co-opting them.
Yeah,
yes.
I mean, you sign him to the contract and you say, "Hey, we like what you were doing in wrestling promotion X. Do it for us now."
Yeah,
Because
and
as
that's
I've been
that's a
saying,
good thing because that usually ends up playing to someone's strengths.
right? As I've been saying,
What you do right on the indies is usually what works right with the bigger audience.
that's what I was just going to say that I've been saying that for years, and I've been saying that for years. When a guy is
And here's the
successful,
thing. Yeah,
when a
what
guy
Colt
when some,
Cabana did right on the
yep,
indies is not what he did right. Was not what they did with him in the WWE, right?
right, exactly.
They
So it's
made him this Scotty Goldman character. They gave him barely a chance to do, and I just don't think they ever really got what he could do with his comedy and his wrestling together. So he did what a lot of the guys right now are doing, which is he believed in himself. He bought into himself, and he turned himself into a bigger personality as a result of it. And obviously with the Art of Wrestling podcast and touring internationally and making documentary DVDs. So in the long run, things worked out for him, and in the long run, things worked out for a lot of the talents who were leaving at this point.
absolutely, absolutely. You're right. It's like maybe the shortcomings of his WWE time really allowed him to become a better wrestler, performer, and businessman because he had to put it on himself to become successful.
Fair enough. I also just want to go back and give credit to Pierce here. He was very giving in this match. Really made it all about Cabana, and because that's what the fans wanted at that point. So I didn't want to close this show without giving Adam Pierce the proper credit for something he would do very well when he became Booker and he made the sporadic wrestling appearances. Is always jobbed out and always made sure the other person looked better. So let's go to final thoughts on the show. GST.
Overall, I think it's worthy of picking up if you can find it anymore. I'm not even really sure if you can, but Yeah, one of those shows that it's one of those. I don't want to say milestone shows, but it was an end of a certain era for Ring of Honor. And if you're a fan of Colt Cabana, and a lot of people are, I don't see how you couldn't have it in your collection.
And Miccio, overall thoughts on your show after your marathon of getting it all done today?
It was good times, great memories, but the memories lasted just too long.
All right, very fitting way to put it. Let's get into some plugs here on our way out. Chris, Miccio, what do you have to plug?
What do I have to plug? I don't have anything to plug. But if you're here in Brooklyn, I guess on the 19th, and you're not watching the ROH pay-per-view that night, Tier 1 Wrestling and Warriors of Wrestling are putting on a show at St. Finbar's Church here in Brooklyn. Jeff Cobb will be here in New York making his East Coast debut, I believe. So if you have a chance to go out and see that, I would suggest you do that. Check out Tier 1 Wrestling on Facebook and Twitter for more information. Also, if you want to catch any of my pearls of wisdom, you can check me out on Twitter. It's at Chris_Miccio, and I occasionally have something interesting to say, but I know I retweet a lot of good stuff. So if you want to see some funny stuff, some good stuff, check out my Twitter.
And GST, let's get some plugs for you and for the PW Pondering site in general.
Yeah, so hey, first thing up, check out the podcast of honor that we put up. You can check that.
Wait a minute, we do that show
Amazing,
too?
isn't it? It's crazy. So you guys should check that out. Also, tons of content coming your way from New Japan, NXT, the Cruiserweight Classic, all that stuff up at pwponderings.com. And as always, leave a 4 or 5 star review for us on iTunes and Stitcher. It really helps us out.
And hopefully we'll do one more podcast of honor show at the least. After the pay-per-view or after Field of Honor, we'll work it out. We're going to work out the details, guys. But for now, if you want to check out my Twitter musings, it is twitter.com/Ari Berenstein, or type in Column of Honor in the search bar. And like GST said, don't forget to check out our Death Before Dishonor 14 preview that's up right now on the Podcast of Honor feed on pwponderings.com. And that's going to do it, guys. We did another Retrocast, and God knows when we'll do another one, but we enjoy these occasional dips into the past. And
I know our fans in Belgium and Italy will be happy.
That is true.
I guess so. So we do it for the fans. It's like sort of like a comic book annual. Every so often that comes up, it's a special edition, and you never know. It's always special when it happens. So that's what we're going to try and do here. Maybe do it a little bit more often than annually, but you never know. Vacation is still here for us teacher guys, so we're going to keep going with that.
Yeah, maybe we can bang on another one relatively soon.
We'll see, guys. Keep your eyes and your ears peeled. And so until then, that's been our back in the past look, our ROH Retrocast. Thank you guys for listening, and we'll see you later.